I call to order this December 9th, 2020 meeting of the Needham Finance Committee. As a preliminary matter, permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Josh Levy, Vice Chair.
Here.
Barry Kaufman.
Here.
John Connolly.
Here.
Tom Jacob.
Here.
Rick Lunetta.
Here.
Dick Riley.
Yes.
And Louise Miller is no longer here yet, is not here yet. Louise Misgard?
Here.
Great. This open meeting of the Needham Finance Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. Except for the agenda item entitled Citizen Request to Address the Finance Committee, this meeting will not feature public comment. The meeting is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website. Accordingly, please be aware that the meeting is being recorded. Some attendees are participating by video, and others may be able to see you on the screen. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body will be available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the planned agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude the remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. As a first order of business, I would ask for a motion that this meeting will be continued to the committee's next meeting of December 16th, 2020, should a technical problem develop. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Great. Thank you.
So
We will
much for
now-
the roll call.
Oh, right. Josh Levy.
Aye.
No.
So moving to the first item on the agenda, citizen request to address the Finance Committee. Are there any citizens present? No?
Chair, I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of November 6, 2020 and December 1st, 2020.
I move their acceptance.
Second.
Approval.
Great. All in favor? Roll
Aye.
call vote.
Aye.
Dick,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so next item on the agenda is the 2022 department budget requests. The first, do we have members of the building department?
Yes, Madam Chair, but before that, we do have individuals here that may or may not want to speak to the resident committee budget request. We have Cecilia Semchek, On behalf of the Memorial Park trustees, we have Tatiana Swanson on behalf of the Commission on Disabilities, and we have Gloria Grice on behalf of the Historical Commission. If you would like, I will promote each one of them up to panelist.
Sure, that would be great. Why don't we start with Memorial Park trustees? We bring them all in.
Sure, I'll bring them all in. And all three are here, Madam
Great.
Chair.
Welcome. We will start with Memorial Park trustees. Cecilia, is that your?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It's pretty much just the same request as every year for the flags, the $750.
okay. Does anybody have any questions? Dick?
I understand it's Park and Rec and so forth does most of the work associated with the maintenance of the, has there been any dramatic change in that expense as a result of the new facility?
So we have had some coverage over there with custodial services now that we didn't before with the old facility under building maintenance, but that's been less this year just because of the pandemic. We haven't had very many people in there. But other than that, there's been no major changes.
And nothing is happening inconsistent with expectation then?
No.
Fine.
Josh?
And it sounds like there haven't been any costs to Memorial Park for the hosting of the town meetings outdoors on the parking lot.
No.
Does anybody else have any questions on Memorial Park? Great. Celia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commission on Disabilities.
Hello.
Hi, Tatiana, welcome.
Hi. My name is Tatiana Swanson. I'm the liaison to the Commission on Disabilities. And the budget request is level funded for FY22. As a matter of fact, it's been level funded for a number of years. The budget consists of $550 for supplies and $1,500 for stipend for the liaison. As far as updates, the Commission on Disabilities continues its mission to be an advocate for the disabled community in Needham, continue to be in an advisory role to the town as far as compliance with 88 and Americans with Disabilities Act and the Architectural Access Board, and in general continue to educate and train the public on advancing the interest of the disabled community in Needham.
Great. Rick?
I ask this question every year. Is that enough money to do what you need to do and advance and grow and try new things year over year?
Yeah, we actually, it's been okay. We have struggled with spending some of the budget because, as with most departments, COVID hit. And so a lot of our projects had to be put on hold, and a lot of our initiatives that we discussed at the beginning of last year were sort of put on hold. We were talking about using some of the communications money to advertise our grant funding. We were talking about buying more supplies for the handicap parking, but there hasn't been as much demand for handicap parking signs, which I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we sell them at cost to the different businesses and private commercial businesses that may require them, much cheaper than you would at a Home Depot or something like that, or a sign place. Hasn't been much demand for that. So yeah, the budget right now, it's working for our purposes. We are hoping that once the crisis passes, we can retake some of those initiatives, and perhaps we might, relook at our budget, but for now the budget is sufficient. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Tatiana? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. And the Historical Commission, Gloria Grice.
Everybody,
Hi.
our annual budget is $1,050, which we, as Dave knows, we very often don't spend. The responsibilities outlined in the bylaw, any of the costs associated with that are paid for by the town. So if there is a hearing, the postings of the newspaper, the notifications, et cetera, do not come off of our budget. So our budget is essentially for outreach purposes. We have been trying increasingly in the past couple of years to reach out to current historic homeowners just to keep them informed about the fact that, because some of them in fact don't know that their home is on the historic inventory because it was placed on the inventory by a prior owner. So to keep homeowners informed, to keep them in some idea of the resources available to them. We were planning this past year to do a reception for prospective homes, the homes that we would like to add to the inventory, but obviously that has to be postponed. But the budget essentially covers those kinds of outreach expenses.
Great. How many homes are there on the prospective inventory list?
The prospective inventory list is about 45, and there are, I think, 120 on the active inventory right now.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Gloria? Dick?
I'd just like to make a statement. Thank you, Gloria, for the articles in the local paper. They're interesting and very informative.
Thank you very much. They're fun to do. I enjoy doing them. I'm glad you like them.
Great. Well, if there are no further questions, Gloria, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And keep doing what you're doing.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Madam Chair, I will bring in David Roach for the building department.
Great. Thank you. David, are you here?
I'm here.
No?
Welcome. How are you?
Good, not too bad. Yourself?
Good. Thank you for coming.
Madam Chair, if I may just make a few introductory remarks on the liaison to the building department. Basically, this year's budget, the increases are solely attributable to contractual increases in compensation in a little over $12,000. So that represents the bulk of the salary and wages, represents $773,000 out of the $824,000 total budget. The expense budget, roughly $50,000. 60% of that is due to activities which it makes sense to outsource because it would be more expensive for us to try to do those services in-house than by outsourcing. Specifically is $20,000 for fire protection engineer consultant and another $12,000 to the Mass Division of Weights and Standards, which inspects the various things that measure and weigh things for the consuming public. So that's the bulk. This is a pretty straightforward budget this year. Dave, I hope I haven't stolen all your thunder.
No, I appreciate it. You about nailed it, Mr. Riley. So if you want me to present the budget, I will.
Sure. if you wouldn't mind.
So if you would like to read along with me, but I'll start with the DSR1 form. Basically, it's our spending estimate for the next fiscal year. I think that it's important to talk a little bit about, how we survived the year. It was definitely a little bit difficult at the beginning. I think everybody was caught a little bit off guard. I don't think we had the protective gear, face masks and gloves and everything that we thought we would, and no one thought we would need, but in order to conduct business, we did need that. It was a little bit of a scramble at the beginning. We caught up with that later on in the spring, and it has not been an issue up till now. We have pretty much continually conducted the necessary inspections that we've had to do throughout the whole pandemic. We've rotated staff in and out where we could, still maintaining a safe environment as far as, inspections. Some inspections can be done virtually, other inspections such as gas testing and stuff like that, where it presents obviously a public hazard. My inspectors weren't comfortable with just taking pictures or somebody saying, yeah, it did pass or whatever. So, we went out and did them. So, and have throughout the process. So that again, it was a little bit of a change. The other change was not having the ability for the public and real estate people and everybody that needs to see files that's involved with a property, the ability to come into the office. So that added extra work on my staff, where now they said, well, can you just, scan the whole file and send me the whole file? So public requests for information have been up, and understandable. The other thing is, and I guess thank God we did, but we adopted a new software program in the spring. We weren't quite ready to launch it, and then when COVID came, we decided to go for it. That gave us the ability to do online permitting, and then some months later, the ability to pay online. So again, it just kind of streamlined the process a little bit. Working with new software wasn't the easiest thing. IT department donated as much time as they could to the process, and the software sounded good in the beginning, but it really, it's a basic software and you have to build the whole program. And we've done that. We're still doing that, and we're bringing on more and more departments so we can utilize the system more throughout the town. So it's a good thing. It's working. Very little pushback from most of the public. I think most of the contractors like it. They don't have to spend their time to come down in the office, pull the permits, and do what they have to do to get that done. So that also produced a couple other little issues where, we used to get plans in, 24 by 36 rolls, and we could roll them out on the desk and do your plan review. Now we're doing it with a desktop computer. So we're looking at getting a little bigger monitors so we can review the information more accurately and easily. Again, we're working with IT to do that. Same thing with the ability to actually record that stuff in the field. We're using some tablets right now. The tablets may not be the best result. Maybe some sort of a laptop or another unit we'll use in the future. But the point is that we be able to, in the field, access the whole system look up permits, look up who's got a permit, who doesn't have a permit. And as long as we have a signal, that's basically permitting that's going to be up to the minute and not really like up to the end of the day or maybe up to the end of the week. So that's work in progress. It is working. And like I said, for the most part, I think people like it. So with all that said, I think everybody's looking forward to getting back to some sort of normalcy and allowing people to come in and be able to get out and get the full staff in the office when we really need them, instead of people shifting in and out and trying to work from their home. So it is what it is, but construction, I think as you drive around town, you'll notice that construction hasn't slowed through this whole process. Construction has been vibrant. I think the only slowing is that materials in some cases were slowed because factories were closing. So some projects have been delayed due to that. But as far as sales of property and new permitting for single family homes and renovations, it's the same as it was last year. We did not see any large projects, with the exception of the town projects, only because I think it looks like they're going to probably hold off for a year or so and see what's going on. So we move down that page, and basically you can see what our budget is this year, what it was last year. There's a slight increase over that. Page 2 of the DSR1 form, fees collected. We expected that, that's probably going to be about the average collected every year without any large projects. You can see that single family dwellings is around 84. I suspect that that's going to stay the same for the next couple of years. And obviously tear downs are respectable, with that number. You may not get any ground up in new homes. So if you got 84 single families, you can assume it's 84 tear downs. Certificate of inspections and everything we do on a yearly basis, none of that has really changed. You go to page 3 of the summary, and again, it's a breakdown of our costs. As Dick said before, our expenses are identical to what they are last year and have been for the last couple of years. And the only increase is salaries. The staffing is basically the same, or the same as we're covering, we're carrying in the budget. We still have 2 positions that we're having difficulty filling, and I probably will until this whole COVID thing is over. But page 5, again, is a breakdown of just the expenses, and everybody asks every year, what's the 12,000 for? The Mass Division of Weights and Standards, they come in and they do all the gas pumps, they calibrate all that, they calibrate any weighing equipment, they do scanners, they do at Roach Brothers or Sudbury Farms, they test the scanners, they test the weight machines there. And we simply wouldn't have the equipment to do what they do for the 12,000. So that's a number that's been in there for, I think, the last 10 years. Same thing with the fire protection. We carry 20 typically in the last couple of years. We haven't spent over 10,000 for that. I don't expect that to be any different. But we carry that number just in case we ended up having to bring in another consultant for some reason. Page 6 is basically a no, we don't deal with that. After that is just a breakdown again of our expenses, salaries, and that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward.
Sorry, thank you. Dave, will the new software that you implemented allow you to scale your department? Meaning, will it necessitate hiring less people if activity picks up, or?
No, no. Actually, what it does is actually creates a little bit more work for us, but it makes it a little bit more user-friendly for the user. And the reason I say that is that there's multiple reviews that have to be done by multiple people as certain things come in. So no, and we said this all along, that wasn't the point of the online permitting. The online permitting was just to prevent people from driving to the building and physically having to come in and actually pull permits. But everything else that goes along with that, the review, the permit fees, the charges after the fact, still add up to the same amount of work for us.
Okay, great, thank you. Dick?
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned that the basic residential work was pretty standard, but there were no big projects coming through the pipeline. How about the project up at the Heights for the old Calverts, where we had the zoning vote just in the last annual meeting? Is that on scale or on track, or where does that stand?
I haven't heard a word, to be honest with you. Haven't heard a word about the other hotel that was supposed to be built in the park. I believe it was going to be a Hyatt. I think that's on hold. Children's Hospital project is approved, but there's another approval that has to happen through the state, which could take up to a year. So they weren't looking to possibly break ground into maybe late 22. And it wasn't because of the COVID, it was just because of scheduling. So other than that, I don't really know of any other big projects coming through.
So those that have funded our new growth in the past years, so that looks relatively quiet for the next year or two, I take it.
Yeah, I think so. Yep. I mean, we're not going to hit the pot of gold like we did a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen again.
Great. Barry?
Hey, David, it's Barrett Kaufman. You had talked in previous years of issues you've had getting inspectors. Where are you at in terms of, being able to, I get the sense everything's being done on a timely basis, but how are you managing with your inspectors or access to inspectors?
So that situation has actually got a little worse because we had a part-time wiring inspector that ended up going full-time to Newton. So we lost him in the spring. So we've been keeping up with it, but like I said in the past, I don't know if it's the amount of hours that is scaring people off, and again, we've advertised a couple of times. We haven't done it aggressively, continuously. What I was hoping is that, through the associations that these inspectors are associated with, that they would kind of spread the news out and get some feelers and see if there's anybody interested. Really, what happens on a part-time situation is you've got to get a person that maybe is part-time with another town, wants to do part-time with us, and kind of makes it a full-time position. Short of that, it's increasing the hours to make it more, more of an attraction, I guess. But again, these are highly skilled positions, electricians and plumbers, and where the economy is pretty good right now. Again, I said in the past, is that they're not going to give up $150 an hour to come to work for me for, $36 an hour. So that's the problem. And it just doesn't seem to be that pool of people out there that are interested in that kind of either the hours or the position because of the hours or the money or all of the above.
Rick?
Dave, just a thought, since this problem seems to be perennial and never go away. Would it be worth our while to take maybe less experienced individuals and train them and make them our own, and not rely on highly skilled retirees? It seems to be that labor pool is in short and tight supply, and probably doesn't allow you to give the best service delivery that you'd want to. Have you given any thought to that?
We have talked about that, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure if that I know it. When you become an inspector, you have to be, a licensed contractor at some degree. Whether you have to be a master to be an inspector, I'm not sure as far as plumbing. Same with electrical. So obviously there's journeymen, then masters or whatever. Can a journeyman plumber become an inspector? That's something I need to check with through the state. But I'm finding that if that's the case, a journeyman plumber is usually a younger person, and a younger person is more apt to stay in the trade than somebody that's not, that maybe wants to get out looking for some benefits and kind of wants to wind down a little bit. So yeah, it's difficult. And as I talk to everybody that, in my association, they're plumbing and electrical inspectors. These people are all, well into their, late 60s, 70s or something, and they're out there doing inspections. So it doesn't seem to be a young man's sport at this time.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any more questions for David? Oh. David, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
All right, you guys all have great holidays.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Lee Newman is here. I will let her in, and once she's in, I'll ask her if she wants anybody else to join.
Thank you.
I think under the remote meeting, open meeting law, I need to recognize myself as being in the meeting now. So I am.
Louise, welcome.
Thank you.
For joining us.
Lee, is there anybody else you want to join?
Yes, Jean McKnight is here from the Planning Board with me, as well as Deb Anderson from the Conservation Department.
Madam Chair, I've let both people in.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I met with Lee yesterday, and basically Lee will go over the highlights of her budget. It looks like it's a level funded budget. There is one movement in that they moved the Director of Economic Development out of Planning and Community Development and into Kate's budget. Is that correct, Lee?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So Lee, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, so I think Carol was right. My budget is essentially level funded on the salary side, except for required increases, which are contractually required. The economic development position was shifted into the town manager's office, so it's no longer reflected in our budget, and that's what the decrease in the salary account reflects. And expenses are level funded pretty much from the last fiscal year. I probably should just give you a general overview of what's been going on in the department since COVID occurred. We effectively moved to online permitting in a very, very short period of time, and Zoom meetings with all boards across conservation, ZBA, design review board, planning. And we're successful in, I think, retaining our current permitting protocol without much of a hiccup. It was a stressful, I would say, a month and a half, 2 months while we figured out how to move everything to complete remote work. Most of my staff are all working remotely out of their houses. And we are managing all the permitting that way, with folks going into the office one day a week in each division to do the paperwork that's required. But we were able to successfully come up with strategies to allow us to accept applications remotely, manage the filings with the town clerk remotely, set up meetings with the boards and hold public hearings effectively, and issue decisions in pretty much the same framework that we were able to do it pre-COVID. And that was, I think, quite an accomplishment. And I would also say that our permitting load, surprisingly, really has not significantly dropped. We've had some major projects that have been permitted, at least on the planning side, during this period of time. We just issued the permits for 140 Kendrick Street. We are reviewing the application for Children's Hospital and plan to, I think, probably close that out the beginning of January. And I did hear you ask some questions of Dave about what was planned at Avery Manor, and in particular, the assisted living, the 155 units of assisted independent living memory care units that are planned there. And we are currently having conversations with the developer team, reviewing the plans in preparation for a filing, probably sometime within the next couple of months. So that project is moving along. In terms of planning activities, we're moving forward on the highway commercial zoning initiative. There was a working group that worked with GPI on a traffic study that was done, looking at a certain build-out analysis to basically create a foundational baseline for the density that would be appropriate there. And the planning board is moving forward now with an urban design plan for that property at this reduced density, and a fiscal impact study. So we're continuing along the planning efforts for that study. I anticipate there will probably be some interest in re-examining the housing plan that was completed in 2007 in light of some of the equal justice issues that have been raised, and people's interest in providing affordable housing to a wider cross-section of individuals, and kind of looking at our housing plan in that context. So I think that's basically my overview of the general component of the budget, and in terms of what the planning board's major projects are, which are highway commercial going forward, probably a look at the housing plan. On the permitting side, advancing Children's Hospital, work on Avery Manor. And although I can't disclose particular properties, there has been some good news on the horizon in terms of the planning work that was done for the Center Business District and Chestnut Street Business District. I'm in conversations with two property owners who are looking at properties within those districts to redevelop as mixed-use developments with combinations of retail on the first floor and housing on the upper stories. So I'm hopeful that we might actually see at some point some activity advancing the goals and objectives of those two plans that were completed back in 2009.
Great, thank you, Lee. Questions? Dick?
Yeah, Lee, I'm a little confused. Your budget is flat after allowing for the transfer of that one position to the town manager, or it's really down if you take that into account? So it wasn't clear to me.
I'm sorry, my salary account is down. My expense line items are stable.
Okay, fine. That was confused. Thank you.
Louise?
So why is it that economic development is moving to the town manager's office?
I think it was felt that the economic development position actually services the Council of Economic Advisors, which reports directly to the town manager, or basically to the selectman through the town manager, and that would be a more effective strategy to manage that position.
Thank you.
Jane, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to give credit to the staff in general for helping us through this, as Lee described it, somewhat stressful time. And particularly, I want to single out the assistant planner, Alexandra Klee, and the man who works ordinarily in the conservation department, Clay Hutchinson. He seems to be a person with the sufficient technical skills to help us with our Zoom meetings. And without Alex and Clay, those meetings would be much more stressful than they are. They really help us to get through and make sure we're doing everything right in those meetings.
Thank you. Any other questions at all for Lee?
You want to go through then the DSR 4s? Is it 4?
5s.
Oh, 5. Okay, I've got the number wrong.
Yeah, why don't we just mention those?
Oh, sure. So I have, with my budget submittal, there were 2 DSR 5s that were submitted. One was for the small repair grant program. And if you remember, we appropriated $50,000 back in fiscal year 2020 for this program. And we're asking now to continue the program. It's been successful. We've committed all the funds from that first round from the 2020 funding. We were able to service 13 applicants at an average of $4,000 per individual. And these are basically repairs for minor work that's being done to assist moderate, low-income seniors, light carpentry, window repairs, gutter replacements, detectors for your houses. And I think, and it's been a successful program, and we had actually no difficulty at all securing applicants and funding it. There was a lot of interest in the program. So this is just basically a request to continue what we had originally rolled out, I think, as a pilot, and which we would like to continue. So that's the first DSR 5. And then the second DSR 5 is for planning consulting assistance. You had funded this previously, and we've gone through all the monies that have been allocated under those earlier, or will go up. We will actually deplete those accounts with the remainder planning work that's planned for Highway Commercial 1. So this is just an effort to reallocate that $60,000 so that there's money available for planning funds as projects become available that the planning board can tap into.
Josh.
Thank you, Carol. So I have a question about the planning consulting assistance. When we approved this, I think in the spring, I asked when the last time we had approved a similar type of funding mechanism, and I think it was about 3 years prior at least, and that it was expected to last about that amount of time. Do you know, I guess my question is, what were those funds spent on, and is there an anticipation that the new request, new $60,000, would last a similar amount of time, less than a year, or would last a longer amount of time?
I think the last time we funded this account was in 2015. There was a supplement that we did at a recent town meeting for monies for a traffic study for Highway Commercial 1 to supplement the original $45,000. I anticipate that this money would probably last a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, depending upon the demand that comes up for projects moving forward. I know the planning board is interested in examining again the Chestnut Street corner to look at whether or not there are barriers embedded in the existing zoning that we adopted back in 2009 that are not allowing development to proceed as we had anticipated. To also look at the business district block on Highland Avenue between Rosemary and May Street, where Sudbury Farms is located. That district was last studied about 25 years ago, and the zoning at that time was not updated, and that's the last business district that needs to be examined. And then there's also some conversation about re-looking at Avery Square and whether or not it needs to be adjusted to promote more mixed-use development.
Okay. And just to clarify, so is this 60,000 meant to replenish the funds, the 60,000 that I believe we funded this past fiscal year in 2020, that was the top up, or is it meant to replenish the funding from 2015?
This is to replenish the funding from 2015. There was originally a proposal to do planning consulting funds at the $60,000 amount that did not go forward in the last fiscal year. What did go forward was, I think it was $35,000 to fund a traffic study by GPI specifically at Highway Commercial 1. Am I being clear?
No, you are. I guess perhaps I'm misremembering. I remember there was a reserve fund transfer request that probably did expire, but then I thought I remembered that there was a budget request as well for fiscal year 2021 that was included.
The reserve fund transfer did expire. That was not utilized. So the only monies that we've ever actually accessed and spent for planning funds were the 2015 allocation of $45,000 and the town meeting appropriation for the $35,000, which covered the GPI work.
Okay, thank you.
Dick?
Yes, Madam Chair, the DSR 4, which is to make permanent the Public Information Office position, and that's a reasonably substantial amount of money. As I recall, this was an issue we had some trouble with a few years ago when it was done on a temporary basis. Is there any need to discuss that request?
Madam Chair, Dave Davison, that's carried in the town manager's select board budget. It's not in the planning board budget.
Oh, so it's the fact that it's in under the, oh, that's right. I went back over there and I was checking another thing and that's what I saw. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Louise?
So I have a question about the small repair grant program. So this is something new as a separate article, right? I just want to clarify that first, because I don't ever recall seeing this as a separate article.
Well, we did it. You funded it once before. This came through. This was funded in 2020 in the dollar amount of $50,000.
Where was that? Under what? In the general fund?
It was done under the general fund. It couldn't be funded under CPA because of the activity that was. It was not a CPA eligible activity.
It was a warrant article.
Okay, so my apologies, I don't recall this particular warrant article, but so how are we determining to whom we are providing financial assistance?
We receive applicants, and they are there was a program guide that was created about what constituted eligibility, and in terms of income, in terms of age, and the kinds of activities that were eligible. The program was advertised and promoted across the community, and applications were received on and processed through an eligibility period. And we did not receive any more applications than we had monies to allocate, so it did not require any kind of lottery system during the first grant round, which was the only round we've actually processed. Your mic is...
You're muted.
So, but you anticipate you will have the same level of requests again in the coming year?
We're hopeful, yes.
Are there any other questions for Lee, Jean, and Josh?
Sorry, I'm fixated on this. The planning and consulting assistant. So Article 10 of this past annual town meeting warrant was approved, I believe, in the amount of $60,000. Lee, did you say that only 35,000 of that has been spent so far?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
I'm just trying to track the numbers.
The appropriation that I show was an appropriation that was done in 2015, and that was for $45,000. And that money is pretty much gone.
Right.
And then appropriation that we did, I thought it was for $35,000 for traffic consulting fees, and those are the only appropriations that I'm aware of.
Okay, I'm looking at the warrant from May's town meeting, and I see Article 10 for 60,000.
I
So
don't
maybe
think that was adopted.
that was withdrawn.
Madam Chair, Dave Davison speaking. Article 10 did pass. It was for $60,000. It passed by unanimous consent at the town meeting in the Memorial Park parking lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
I'm sorry, then I'm confused.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think where the confusion may be is there was a request in the original warrant for the annual town meeting that would have been held in May, and that article was one of the ones that was originally withdrawn, but it and not acted upon. But as we came closer to the June town meeting, it was reinserted
And passed.
and passed.
So then maybe, perhaps we don't have that answer right now, but maybe it would be helpful to know how much of that 60,000 has been spent.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't have my facts right on this. I'll speak with Dave, and well, I'll have to get back to you on this particular DSR 5 and whether it's timely or not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lee? All right. Lee, thank you very much. Jean, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. I think this is the first time I've attended a finance committee meeting. It's
Oh, well,
wonderful to
welcome.
see you work. Thank you.
Thank you. The next on the agenda is the Minuteman School.
Madam Chair, I'll let the superintendent from Minuteman into the meeting.
Good
Ed,
evening.
welcome. Good evening.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Yes, happy to be here. Good to see some of you again in virtual world.
Did you want to take us through your COVID-related cost expense?
I think I'm here to talk about the Minuteman athletic fields.
Okay, sorry.
Or I can speak to the COVID. I know Kate put in the COVID expense share as well. It's up to you, Madam Chair. Whatever you'd like me to speak about, I'm prepared to.
Now let's talk about the athletic complex project.
Okay. Did the members receive a copy of the PowerPoint? Would you like me to go through that quickly or?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me a sec. I'm bringing it up from beginning. There we go. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, if you have any questions as I'm going, just stop. But just to review, our SBA project is a year ahead of schedule, and it is on budget. It's actually a little lower than budget, which is why I'm talking to you about this. Originally, the Minuteman School Building project included a minimal amount of money in the MSBA budget for fields. But at the time that we submitted our budget to the MSBA, we had an alternate for a larger build for athletic fields. not knowing, what the project would be like, but I'm happy to report that based upon the management of the project team, we had $4 million. We realized we would have $4 million about 8-9 months ago available for fields. So back in September, we went out to bid for a base bid and alternates for fields. And we've received some pretty competitive bidding back in early October. The crisis that we're in has resulted in low interest rates, which is also a sort of a unforeseen silver lining to this cloud we're in. And we've realized that for a small incremental investment in lighting around these 3 fields that we'd be able to generate some revenue. This was our base bid that we put together when we realized that we were going to have more than we thought left over from the project to put towards athletic fields. And this base bid, which we estimated with our architects and engineers would be about $5.9 million, included 3 synthetic fields, a softball field, baseball field, a stadium, emergency access, maintenance equipment, and scoreboards. And so we put together a bid and went out to the field, so to speak. And these were the alternates that we included in the base bid that I just showed you. And that really is the alternates 1, 2, and 3 were lighting for the 3 fields. Alternate 4 included a competitive field, track and field resource around the stadium. And then alternate 5 was equipment. And then alternate 6 was fencing around the entire complex. So when the school committee began understanding that we had some money left over and we wanted to try to provide a compelling athletic facility, we looked at what money do we have, the district itself, to achieve the base bid of 3 fields with no lighting and no fencing and no additional equipment. And we estimated that we had about $4 million from the MSBA project, which we've already borrowed for. We also had a facilities rental account, which has been pretty quiet for the last few years because we've had no home fields where other entities were renting out. And we had allocated about $600,000 from there. And then we had a capital stabilization account that was really well funded with $1.2 million in it. And the reason it was well funded was because about 5 years ago, when we established the capital stabilization account, it was for the purpose of funding the equipment in the new school. Because as I'm sure many of you are aware, the MSBA formula for FF&E, furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, is a per student allocation that is woefully inadequate for a vocational technical high school. It's pretty much the same formula for a middle school or an elementary school and a high school. So we began putting away $300,000 or so a year, anticipating that we would spend that money on equipment in the new facility. Well, what also happened during this last 3 years was that the governor put out something called the Capital Skills Equipment Grant Program. And Minuteman has been very successful in getting grants to the tune of about $1.5 million. So that stabilization account was never used, we never needed to use it. So the school committee back in June voted to allocate most of that account to these athletic fields. This is, I don't know if you can see it, it's pretty small, but the Heimlich Construction was the low bidder. One of the encouraging things is we got 8 bids. Heimlich was the low bid by quite a bit, well, $2 million less than the high bid. And after we did some vetting and interviews with the 2 low bidders, we found that Heimlich was very competent. They had just completed a synthetic field in Lexington. They completed the athletic complex at Shawsheen Regional Vocational School in Billerica. And you can see the columns there are the costs of each of the alternates. And this just shows the alternates and what the bid was like. About $1 million for lighting, and another almost $900,000 for the competitive running track, equipment, and fencing. This slide just shows the lowest qualified bidder and the alternates, and the columns are the alternates, as it says there, and then the rows, the base construction budget, you can see for the base bid was $4.4 million. And then working with our owner's project manager and architects, as any construction project would, we had about 10% in contingency. And then Skanska's fees, the architect fees, and other fees associated with the two towns, Lexington and Lincoln, that these athletic fields will reside in. And really the key row is the bottom row, where you can see as you go across the delta between what we had allocated and what the cost would be. It's about $1.9 million in the bottom right-hand corner. So the school committee had and I met with the town managers a couple of times about, what would Minuteman need to do to kind of get this full build. We call it phase one, because it doesn't include tennis courts or field houses or anything like that. Based upon sort of the current interest rates, which are very favorable, we looked at borrowing. So going back to that slide, that delta of about 1.9. And then just to review, we had a very extensive study that we did internally with some partners, including the town of Lexington, because at one point in time, Lexington wanted to contribute a significant amount to this new athletic complex, intending to have more time for Lexington groups to use the fields. Well, long story short, that never went forward. But we did do a study, and we submitted the study to a national team, Ballard and King, to kind of do a review of our analysis of what sort of revenue we could produce. And when the fields are fully established, they conservatively are estimating about $400,000 a year from those three fields. And these fields will complement other rental revenue that is now in place, but with COVID, obviously, we haven't been able to realize any revenue from our theater, gymnasium. We have corporate meeting rooms on site, student unions, our restaurant. And so we're hopeful in the next year that will start to generate revenue again, and the community can start to enjoy it again. When you look at what the cost of borrowing would be across the 9 towns, you can see from this slide that the Needham portion, which is currently 7% of the total assessment, although Needham's enrollment is growing. But if we were to take a picture in time, this would mean an additional, $16,000 to $14,000 a year for 10 years. If we borrowed at 1.7, we're hearing the rates are more like 0.7, but we're trying to be conservative. The school committee of Minuteman awarded the base bid, which we knew we had the funds for, back in October. And we're hoping to start construction in a few weeks. Not just on the base bid, we haven't awarded any contract yet for the alternates. But the Heimlich Construction has agreed to hold the pricing that he provided in his bid back in October. He'll hold that pricing until the middle of January. And these would be completed next fall for our kids to finally have home fields again after 4 years of not having home fields. So I'll leave the slides up if anyone has a question about any of the slides. Richard, I don't know if Madam Chair, you can call. Folks, I see Richard raising his hand.
Sorry, Dick?
Could you bring back the slide that shows the incremental cost between up through alternate 3 to alternate 5, it looks like it doubles.
This
From
one?
900,000 to, is it, where was I? Yeah, alternate, yeah, it goes from
Here's 1, 2, and 3.
809. So I guess what I'd like to know is what's the gain from alternates 4 and 5? Why is that value
Well,
consistent with that price differential?
sure. Alternate 4 is a real track, a real competitive running track rather than a walking track. So really what it does is it adds the whole track and field athletic programming back into the mix. It's a 8-lane competitive track along with the other track and field things that we currently don't have at all and didn't think we would be able to have. So all of our track and field events, except cross country, have been held off campus, obviously, and that's the big one there.
That answers my question. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Have a question? Trying to look at everybody's.
Sure.
So I have a question. Could you go back to the costs per town?
Yep, this one?
Yes, thank you. So could you remind me what the share split across towns, I guess how that's calculated by, some weighted average of enrollment, I assume, but then also is that fixed?
No.
Okay.
It will change a little bit every year based on a 4-year rolling average of enrollment. Right now, enrollment is about 7%. We've had, you may have heard, we've had over the last 3 years, we've been having significant increase in enrollment from our member towns. Needham is probably going to go up a little bit next year. We have 27 students from Needham at the moment, but our applications for next year are tracking about 20% higher from Needham right now, which is a good thing.
So these numbers assume a static share?
Yeah, we had to take a picture at some point in time.
Yeah, okay.
But the annual payment is what we're dividing up among 9 towns. So,
thank you.
Sure. Any other questions I can answer? I should.
Barry Kaufman has a question.
Yeah, one quick question. I assume once you can start generating revenue from this, does the revenue go into just the general school fund? It obviously is not going to offset the debt per se. Is that correct?
It doesn't directly, but no, it does not go in the general fund. It goes into our revolving funds. And the revolving funds by statute can only be spent, any revenue generated in excess of the asset can only be spent on the asset that generates the revenue. So certainly, if we're going to be collecting $400,000 of revenue, and I think we will, from those 3 fields, that will go to offset the debt as well as operating costs. And that capital stabilization fund, we're planning on setting aside about $168,000 a year to replace the fields in 10 years.
No, that's
So we
fine.
don't have to come back and borrow again. And I should mention these fields, they call synthetic, but they're made out of an organic material. They're made out of yellow pine trees that are planted and sustainably grown in the United States. When we first started looking at synthetic fields, I was answering a lot of questions, and myself, I'm not comfortable with the petroleum-based products that are on these synthetic, but this is a natural product. It's really cool. Maybe I get too excited about it, but
And it has
there's only 1 or 2 fields like it that have been installed. So I think it's the wave of the future for synthetic fields.
And is the usable life of this type of field as long as a more standard synthetic field?
We've been told it's at 10 to 12 years
Okay.
if it's managed appropriately, and some folks have been getting a little longer than that, depending on the weather and stuff like that.
There are only two of them, though?
That's all I've heard. There's only been 2 installed in this area. And then they've both been installed by the contractor who's doing ours. So, and we heard very good reports from the 2 school systems that had them. The athletes love them, I guess. And you don't get all that black fibrous stuff kicking up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you watch the Patriots win or lose lately, and you see the black stuff kicking up on the field, that gets into people's houses, into the gymnasium. There's none of that in this field, so.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions for Ed? No?
Well, I appreciate the time and the support from Needham, and happy to come back anytime.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Dave, do you dump me off or do I leave?
I can move you back to the attendees. Do you want to stay in case there are questions of me that I can't answer relative to the reserve fund transfer for COVID-19 related expenses?
I'll be glad to stay lurking in the background if you need any help.
So, Madam Chair, there is a reserve fund transfer request to the Finance Committee for $12,614. And the purpose of the reserve fund transfer is to allow the town to make a payment to the Minuteman Regional School for costs that they have incurred related to COVID-19 expenses. They have incurred expenses and have documented them to the member communities. The total cost was approximately $210,000. In Needham's determined share of that expense is $12,614. Currently, the budget for Minuteman is 0, as the appropriation matched our assessment for the year. Should the Finance Committee approve this transfer, we would be making payment to Minuteman. It is also the intention of the town to file for reimbursement through the state's CARES program, which we anticipate will receive 100% reimbursement. Any questions members of the committee may have?
Is it Louise?
So why would we need a reserve fund transfer if we're going to be charging all of this to the CARES Act funding?
The purpose of the reserve fund is so that we can make payment to them now, because one, we don't know of the timing of the reimbursement, and 2, there is a chance that it may not be eligible.
So we're allowed to deficit spend for COVID-19 expenses. Wouldn't it be all right for us to simply charge that to the CARES Act funding? And then if we need the funds in February or March, to then do a reserve fund transfer then?
What is unclear is we can do deficit spending for town departments with submitted expenses to CARES for reimbursements. This is essentially an additional assessment by another entity, and it's not as clear if we are authorized to deficit spend on anticipation of reimbursement. And that is the reason we're going the reserve fund transfer route.
And where does the money end up?
The $12,614 would reimburse the town and close out to free cash.
Okay, thank you.
And Dave, these COVID expenses are through what point? Or are they through the balance of the year or?
They are expenses identified through the period of eligibility, which would be expenses incurred or benefits derived through December 30th, 2020. If I'm incorrect on that, I would defer to the superintendent.
No, that's correct.
And so are we anticipating an additional reserve fund transfer for the balance of the academic year? What?
No.
Not from Minuteman. This was one of those situations, if I may, where regional schools were simply forgotten from the formula of allocation. And this is not just regional vocational schools, but all regional schools. It's got no allocation. And we were encouraged by the Department of Ed, MMA, and other entities to make our requests to our member towns. And we've been very fortunate in the Minuteman district that all 9 towns have been very helpful in helping us access some of those funds for the costs that we've incurred.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the reserve fund transfer.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Barry?
Approve, yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Madam Chair, I will send to you via DocuSign the reserve fund transfer to be executed by you.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you very much for your time. So while you're doing that, Dave, are there any other Finance Committee updates and issues before we move to the next thing on the item on the agenda, which is executive session? Barry?
One quick thing, Carol, is there any update on an additional filling the empty seat?
The answer to that would be no. First of all, I submitted the suggestions that we had that you've all given me and to our town moderator, and I think he's taking those under consideration. I believe he has a few ideas of his own. So I did email him recently to remind him that we are just starting the budget process and another person on the Finance Committee would be greatly helpful at this point, and I haven't heard back. So I suspect that he's still having conversations with prospects. You will all be the first to know when I hear from him. And he suggested that he felt that it was very important to find somebody to help out with this budget season. So I don't think he was going to take that much time to make a decision. Conversely, if there are any other suggestions that you all may have for individuals that you want me to submit to the town moderator, I'm happy to do that. So that's all I know on that one. So if there are no other issues, what we are going to do is our next item on the agenda is to enter into the executive session. Under exemption 6, we enter into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. We will not return to the public session of the Needham Finance Committee. So I now ask for a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Great. Let me take a roll call vote. Joss Levy?
Yes.
Don't you have to declare that having an open session would be detrimental?
All right. Yeah, well, that's implicit, excuse me. Thank you, Louise, under exemption
Sorry.
6. But we're entering into an executive session to discuss a purchase, exchange, or sale of a property, and any discussion in a public forum might have a detrimental outcome on said transaction, which is why we're entering into executive session. Thank you. So, motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
John, thank you. Roll call vote. Josh,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So we need to leave this meeting. And Dave, did you send the Zoom for the executive session?
Yes, it was the email that I sent yesterday
Okay,
to folks where there is a different link. So you would exit out of this meeting, go to that email and click onto the link that's in the email.
great. So we will see you all shortly.
Cool.